welcome back to another episode of The Drive-In. I am your host, Aaron Lopez, and I have a familiar guest host on. Wanted to make sure that we got him on one more time before a big life-changing move. Nick is back again before he moves to Chicago. Nick, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And it wasn't just because he's moving that he's on for this week. Nick has also been begging to share his love for not only musicals, but of Cher as well, as we are going to be talking about Mamma Mia. Here we go again. And I've been referring it as like Mamma Mia 2, but it's not. It's Mamma Mia with the tagline, Here we go again. Starring Amanda Seyfried, Seyfried? Is that how you say it?
Seyfried.
That one. Lily James, Pierce Brosnan, Dominic Cooper, Cher, lots of other people, but those are kind of the big ones. And yeah, it's a sequel / prequel to the 2008 movie based on the theatrical musical Mamma Mia.
Came out 10 years ago?
It was 10 years ago.
Jesus.
Yeah, I looked at it today, and it was
crazy.
2008. That's a long time. It feels like I remember going and seeing it in theaters just yesterday.
Yeah, I feel like I bought it like a year ago. But, I mean, apparently not, because, man, 10 years is a long time.
Well, you got to remember, too, is I remember when this came out, Amanda Seyfried, when she first did this, it was like, really? The girl from Mean Girls is playing?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, she can sing.
She can sing. Because I remember seeing her, the first thing I saw her in after Mean Girls was, what was that called? Something Dogs.
Alpha Dogs.
Alpha Dogs,
That's a good movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing her in it, and I was like, Karen, what are you doing?
When you look at it, and I mean, out of all of the girls, she's kind of had the most success. I mean, you could say Rachel McAdams has too, but she kind of went off in her own way.
She spiked and then fell off. Amanda Seyfried has kind of been pretty consistent, but I would agree with you that of all of the three plastics, she's the one that had.
Well, and especially with Lindsay.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
she's off doing whatever she's doing.
Just bless her heart.
So yeah, it's been 10 years, and a lot has happened in 10 years in this movie, but it's not been. It's kind of weird. It's been 10 years in real life, but it's only been 5 years in the movie.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So our trailer rundown. We got into the theater a couple minutes late, but we did still get 6 trailers. And God damn it, wouldn't it be the first one be Mission Impossible Fallout? The only good thing about that is that this is the last week, since that comes out next week, so I don't have to worry about seeing another Mission Impossible Fallout trailer ever again.
Hooray!
So, yeah, and we will have more information regarding Mission Impossible Fallout and a protest that will be happening next week and at the end of the episode. We had Mission Impossible Fallout, Second Act, The Spy Who Dumped Me, A Star Is Born, First Man, and Welcome to Marwen. Nick, of those, are any of those looking interesting to you?
The Welcome to Marwen one looked really interesting. I really enjoyed, like, what really got me was the animation style.
Mm-hmm.
So you're bouncing back and forth between real life and these dolls that Steve Carell's character has built to cope with his assault, and I mean, it literally looks like they're alive. It's crazy. It's like Toy Story for adults, but so that one really stuck out to me. The Spy Who Dumped Me looked hilarious. I saw a preview for that somewhere else, but that one looked really funny. So those were the two that stood out to me.
Yeah, Welcome to Marwen, I don't remember who originally posted it, but I saw it on Facebook. Someone had said, like, oh, this looks great when it first came out, the trailer. And I checked it out, and I was like, oh my god, this looks awesome.
Yeah.
The only disappointment is that it doesn't come out until Christmas. So
right.
We got quite some time before that comes out. But yeah, Steve Carell in a drama is always a good thing to go see, because he doesn't do it often. So you know that when he does do it, it's a project he's pretty passionate about. Spy Who Dumped Me looked really funny. On second act, quite literally, because it's Jennifer Lopez, and first thing, I don't remember his name, but it's her husband in the movie is the guy from This Is Us, and he was also in Heroes. And as soon as they pop up, I was like, yeah, that's not a believable relationship.
Yeah, no, I know.
Because he's maybe, 35 to 40, and she's got to be pushing 55.
She's pushing,
like, I don't know,
mid 50s. Yeah, that one. And then
it looked fun. I mean, I probably won't see it. I'm not a Jennifer Lopez fan of her acting, but it it did look like a fun movie. Almost kind of just the aspect of getting a job by lying, but not like in a vindictive way. And then it's all about, who you are and losing your true self because she's living out this life of her Facebook self. And
it's just kind of like it's a story that I feel like we've heard many a times, and pass on
First Man, talking about Neil Armstrong and his work trying to get to the moon. Looks interesting, but I don't know. I know how it ends. He gets there, so I don't.
I think the trailer did a really good job of showing how much really went into the development of the space program, and I think that's going to be really interesting, especially to those that have that interest. And like the first one that keeps popping into my mind is my father, who will probably be first in line to go see that. But it looks really good. It's not like weirdly dramatic like Armageddon or Apollo 13. It's like it's an actual storytelling, and
if you're a history fan in any sense, you'll enjoy it. It did look very well done. Ryan Gosling is portraying Neil Armstrong and also doing it in a way that he looked kind of like him. I mean,
it looked very similar.
It was pretty cool. So, and then A Star Is Born. The jury's still out on this one for me. I think it's Bradley Cooper's directing debut. I don't know if I've ever heard of him directing before.
I haven't heard it either.
But Bradley Cooper's directing and starring in this across from Lady Gaga. Looked like an interesting movie, kind of a split between like a romance and a drama, and I don't know. I'm sure it'll get a little bit more buzz as it gets closer. But I have heard some things about it, and people seem to be intrigued, if not a little excited.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear more about the actual plot. You don't get much of it from the trailer. You just, they meet, they fall in love. She's a songwriter that doesn't perform her own stuff. He pulls that out of her. But I want to know more. So I'm definitely intrigued by this trailer.
Yeah, there's going to be another trailer that'll come out that'll give us a little bit more to go off of. But so that is the rundown for this week. If you guys have any thoughts on any of these, or if you just want to share a joyous celebration with us, as we never have to endure another Mission Impossible Fallout trailer. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just funny because I think I've seen it 10 times, if not more. It's been the same damn trailer every time. Like,
it's the same damn movie every time.
Yeah. It's, I don't know.
Let's call a spade a spade. This is the same movie that's been coming out since the 90s. Like, let it go. It's not that strong of a franchise.
Well, and the problem with it is that you know what? I'm not going to dedicate any time to Mission Impossible on this Tom Cruise. You have to have another outlet, not me. Okay. Yeah, his marketing team is like, damn, we lost the drive-in. Yeah. Anyways, our spoiler-free summary for Mamma Mia, here we go again. Pretty simple. We kind of gave it to you earlier, but it's 5 years after the events of the original Mamma Mia from 2008. Sophie learns about her mother's past while trying to live out her mother's dream on the Greek island of Kalikari.
I never knew the name of the island.
The island, the very
I know it's in Greece. That's
iconic. And there's more that happens and whatnot, but basically it's a split between her living her life in the present and us learning about Meryl Streep's Donna in the past. So it's kind of a prequel-sequel split. Anything else before we get into it?
Nope. Let's do this.
All right. So here's your time to take a quick little break from us if you haven't yet seen the movie, because we are going to be giving you all of the songs and plot and all the juicy details. If you haven't seen it and you don't want any of those spoilers, make sure that you pause right now and come see us here in a little bit. Awesome. So we are just with those that have seen the movie, who want to know what we think about it, who want to hear you talk about Cher or Andre. One of those categories that all of our listeners fall into. I'm gonna be in trouble when Andre figures out that there's probably better movie review podcasts out there. Even though he was on it, was it last week?
I mean, this is a fantastic movie review podcast. That's wonderful. It's like top of the line.
It is. It's coming at you every week, and coming up with new and wonderful things such as drunk drive-ins and just listening to.
If you have not listened to the Spice World Drunk Drive-In, you are missing out.
Shameless plug of our own stuff.
Because you can listen to me go on for like, what is it, an hour and a half about how the Spice World is one of the best movies ever made, and it's still true.
Drunk Drive-In is probably our most listened to episode, and for good reason.
Because it's hilarious, and we had a blast recording it.
That was a good one. All right, so let's get into it. Mamma Mia, here we go again. What were your initial thoughts?
I was very intrigued. So I first saw this trailer, I think, when we saw Pitch Perfect 3.
It was either that or Love, Simon.
I think it was Pitch Perfect 3.
But I remember we were together when you first saw it.
I was like, because I had no idea that they were making a second one, and I was just like, so I was really excited when I first saw it. But thinking about it, I'm like, how many ABBA songs can they incorporate into another movie? Like from the trailer, I got what they were doing. Okay, we're telling this, we're telling the backstory, we're telling, what's going on since the happenings of the last movie. But as I've learned more about this, I was very intrigued just to see what music they chose. I was glad that it was not a complete rehash of all of the songs. I'm glad they brought some of the highly popular ones back, and some of the ones that kind of faded into the background during their first movie. So I was definitely interested and excited, and very excited to see this movie, actually. So kicking it off was, what was the first song?
We had our first song was When I Kissed the Teacher, which, okay, so essentially when you look at the plot, I'm trying to remember, because we just saw this, but the movie starts with the hotel. It starts with the present day, and then they start looking back, and they talk about she's talking about her mother, and how her mother has it's very awkward, but because they never really they don't ever tell us how she died.
No,
we just know that Meryl Streep's character died about a year ago, and since then Sophie has been trying to put together the hotel to continue on what her mother wanted.
Yeah, she's trying to continue on her dream. And it sounds like to me, she's planning for this big grand opening. The first scenes are her, Sophie, writing out the invitations to her dad's and to her grandmother. But it almost sounds like, as the movie goes on, that they are trying to correlate this opening with either her birthday or the anniversary of her passing. That's why
it seemed, it was very important that they did it when they were doing it. But they did also make mention, and this is what gets us into the first flashback and the first song, is Sophie says that, don't worry about it. My mother was never, because they're trying to get the last boat out.
Yes.
And she's like, don't worry about it. My mother was never on time for anything either. And then you see Donna, young Donna, played by Lily James, walking to her graduation late. It's already begun, and she is filing herself in. And then we find out she's actually been voted to speak as the valedictorian, which I'm like,
that was a little weird to me.
Not how that works.
And especially if you know you're going to be the valedictorian, how are you going to show up late to your...
Well, and okay, so my thought process in this is she is setting up this whole idea that things come at you fast, and a lot of exciting things have happened in these past years, but you can't ever just what she's learned is expect the unexpected, and she becomes the unexpected. She takes off her gown and she starts singing a song, When I Kissed a Teacher. But I think it's because she was late, because she was prepping for it, but her friends weren't.
Yeah, the other two were there ready to go. So, I don't know. It was just a weird kind of moment.
And this was the first song of the movie, When I Kissed the Teacher, which, I don't know, a little inappropriate to sing at your graduation.
I don't think so, but still, still a good ABBA song that's incorporates with education, and it was definitely a good opening number for a show. Looking at it from a musical aspect, it's high energy, just fun lyrics. So I think it was a strong opening choice for the movie.
And we did get our first cameo of the movie here, with one of the professors was one of the original members of of ABBA.
Yes.
It was Bjorn, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. But yeah, so we had two of the two guys from ABBA actually were in this movie. So we had the first one. Essentially, this gets us with... This is just an opener. It's a traditional opener. This didn't really advance the plot other than, hey, they graduated, what are they going to do now?
Yep, you're kind of standing on this precipice of your whole life is ahead of you. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And I mean, in reality, that's kind of... I guess that really encompasses a lot of the movie. You know, you're standing on the edge of change, and what are you going to do with these opportunities that you have?
Yeah, and this takes place in 1979, which, as I'm looking at some of the songs, the late 1970s is when ABBA was really popular, so you've got that connection. But 1979 is also when Voulez-Vous came out, which is probably one of their more popular albums. It's got the majority of those songs on there are actually in this, which we'll get to here later, including Kisses of Fire, which I thought was really funny how that was included. But after that, then we jump back to Sophie and what's his name? Sky. I was like, I kept wanting to say like,
I kept going.
Fly.
Kept going through the dads. I'm like, no, it's the man, and it's her man. Yeah, Sky.
So Sophie and Sky are in two different places, and I will say, okay, so I had a lot of issues with this movie, but I will say one of the things that I really, really enjoyed we see in the next song, and we see it throughout the movie, but more specifically it was set up here. A lot of the visual transitions were done very well.
Yeah.
Because the problem that one of the things I didn't like about this movie is we have so much on the past and so much in the present that it jumps a lot. But they did a really cool job, and even within timelines of transitioning. And One of Us, which is the next song, was one of those where it just visually was really cool.
Yeah, they did a lot of really cool camera angles and just different changes to, I don't know, kind of represent the distance between the two of them and how, in reality, they want to be brought together. And also, they had a bit of a fight before the song, and it just kind of, I really feel like it told a story, and I agree, visually it was very, very cool how it was done. I liked a lot of, there was an angle where they're both the typical like up against the same wall, but then the camera pans around and it's just back to Sophie, all in one shot, it felt like, and she's back in Greece. Like it was seamless.
Yeah, it's that where what they've done is they're filming on the outside of this created set between these two rooms, but then all of a sudden, as it continues, we're back in the single room without that, behind the scenes cut there. It's pretty cool. And I liked what they did with the mirrors too, where it seemed like they were both in the same place, walking almost out of the mirror, transitioning.
Yeah, I like
it was cool.
One.
It was different, but it was pretty cool. So yeah, they're having a fight. Essentially, Sky's been offered, well, before he gets the offer, he goes to New York to kind of learn for a few weeks under some of the better hotel managers because they're trying to figure out how to do it right. Mm-hmm. And as he was there, he was offered a full-time job, and he likes it. He wants to take it, and clearly, much like her mother, Sophie doesn't want to leave the island. This is the life choice that she's made. Like, here's her path, and it involves being here on the island. Whereas he's kind of making it seem like maybe it might be better. In this fight, before the song happens, they said, how long are we going to have this argument? And there's this huge tell of Sophie saying, if we're going to have this argument until one of us bends, or until we realize that it's until we realize that one of us isn't and it's not worth fighting for anymore, which was giving the insinuation that it was either one of us has to change or we're going to have to leave each other.
Yeah, I mean, when we last saw these two, they were so passionate and so in love, and it's just kind of crazy to think that now they're really on the edge of their relationship. They were, like I said, they were so in love, they were so happy. But I guess that this has been a consistent thing. Probably Sky wanting to leave the island and pursue other ventures. Obviously, he was willing to go to the city, but so maybe, that's some of the things that they've been dealing with in these past 5 years.
Yeah, and I leaned over to Jordan when we saw this, and I was like, they just spent the entire last movie putting them together. They're not going to break them up in the first 10 of this movie. And it almost felt like they were. They did a really good job of selling that this relationship was very much on the rocks. But I mean, then almost immediately they kind of backtrack because One of Us is a song essentially about how one of us is upset about this, even if the other isn't.
Right. But
it's told from the perspective of both of them. So yes, they're both upset about this. So one of us is crying and wishing they were somewhere else and all that. But it ends with essentially this potential split, which is kind of one of the underlying conflicts of the movie.
Yeah, it left it in a way that you really don't know if they are gonna completely split up or not, because you just don't know. I thought that was very interesting.
Well, then that takes us to another flashback. We continue on to see Donna, Rosie, and Tanya, who are outside of their apartment on this kind of little patio talking about what they're doing next. Donna complaining that she didn't show up, her mother didn't show up. How dare she? And then they're like, why are you surprised? She never shows up. She's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And so it gets them talking about what are they doing next. And Donna says that she's going to kind of just have this life experience. She's going to do something for her, which is this insinuation that she is going to go on this trip. She's going to travel across Europe.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, and then it kind of cuts to the montage of them helping, Rosie and Tanya helping her get ready, and her just packing and leaving. And I mean, it kind of developed the Donna character as to how did this idea come across to end up on this Greek island.
Yeah, because I mean, without this scene giving us, it feels like there's no reason for her to be there.
Exactly. There's no reason for all of these travels that she's having and these adventures. This is like your big setup exposition moment.
Yeah, and I gotta say, so as we're looking at the two friends, Rosie and Tanya, I've got to say the girl who played young Tanya really looked like what's her name, Christine Brinsky.
Yeah,
acted like her, sounded like her, looked like her. She was very, very. I
said
well
that
cast.
from like the first time I saw the trailer. I was like, they nailed that one, and I think all three of them, Tanya, Rosie, and Donna, really do resemble their counterparts, their older counterparts. I mean, it's just crazy. So props to you, casting department. You knocked that one out of the ballpark.
Well, and as I'm looking her up, her name is Jessica Keenan Wynn, and you should know all about her.
I should know all about her.
You should know about her.
Why is that?
She was, and from what I'm looking at, I'm seeing she might have been the original. She's known for her role as Heather Chandler in Heather's the Musical.
Really?
I think it's the original. I'm looking up the original Broadway cast, or not Broadway cast, the original run cast.
Oh.
Let's see.
Should know all about her.
Heather Chandler, original off-Broadway cast. So once it went to New York for the first time, it was her. So I believe the bootleg that we saw is her.
That's crazy, because I would have never put those two together.
And you see, if you look at a picture of her outside of like her, very clearly tried to make her look like Borinsky.
Yeah.
Her face, you can definitely tell. It's her. And I'm looking at the playbill picture right now. It's her.
That's hilarious.
So she's the original Heather Chandler.
That's funny. That's really full circle right there.
Yeah. Those of you who don't know, me and Nick, as well as Jordan and many of the other people who have been on this podcast, were in Heather's the Musical a couple years ago. So, yes. So there we go. It all makes sense now.
Full circle, Barbara.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The things you find out listening to the podcast, the driving. So yeah, she did a great job. But then so she breaks. We get this very quick transition, and again, visually a really cool way of progressing the plot, because we get from their flat or their apartment, whatever it is, to the airport, to Greece,
Paris.
That's right. Paris is first. Then to Greece.
She's in Paris for a while.
what am I thinking? No, so she gets to Paris, yeah, because of the French thing. And then the last transition is from her being in Paris back to Sophie on the island, because they're looking at the birds and the birds that are flying in the sky. We transition back down, pan back down, and it's Sophie. That's what that last one was. I knew the island was there somewhere, but it wasn't. We're not quite there.
We haven't made it to the island in the past yet.
But as she gets to France, she apparently is gonna steal a room.
I think she's like the free spirit. She rang the bell like 3 times. No one showed up, so she's like, well, forget it. I'm gonna grab my own key. Ends up behind the desk, and then a highly attractive man in a robe shows up, and he starts speaking. He got locked out of his room, so he starts speaking the most broken French, and that's would be me if I ever had to speak French to anyone.
He's breaking it between bad French and English, and like
it's like Frenchlish, like how we have Spanglish.
It was rough.
It's the French version of that. It's really funny though. And then she says, after he was done, she goes, I didn't quite get that. Can you start again? And then he starts again in the broken French until he realizes, oh, you speak English.
Yeah. And she's like, I don't work here. And then immediately he's like, oh, and this was kind of flirting, but also kind of serious. He's like, oh, then I should phone the police. And you're like, not the best way to do it.
Yes, I don't think you should do that. I wouldn't advise.
Well, and he's like, they probably wouldn't understand my French anyway. So then they go to, because what any two strangers would do as they are meeting for the first time, they decide, oh, we're going to go have dinner together, or lunch, or whatever it was.
Well, so they have this transition, and they're in, I'm sure it's a famous place in Paris, but it's a square. They're walking through, and which dad is it?
He's Harry.
Harry. Okay.
Yep.
I can't keep them all straight.
There's the American one. I would say the American one, even though I think he's also supposed to be British. But Pierce Brosnan is the American one. And that is Sam. Colin Firth plays the British Harry, and then Stellan Skarsgård plays the Swedish Bill.
I remember Bill. Okay, so they're walking through, and he says, "Can you wear your bag on your other shoulder?" And she's like, "Okay," like very skeptical. And he starts to tell this, saying, our hands could brush up against, and I could accidentally grab your hand. And she turns to him and she says, "Or you could just ask to hold my hand." And it made me laugh because it really shows that how strong of a independent woman that Donna is, and it really shows that level of empowerment. But I found that scene hilarious, not only for just the acting, but the costuming. He has on the smallest Cabbage Patch Kid sized leather jacket I've ever seen in my life.
I don't think he could have lifted his arms to grab her hand. That's probably why. I
was like, how are you not walking how are your arms moving at all? Because it's just that thing is so
that was rough.
Small.
Yeah, that was rough.
Oh man.
And we're jumping a little bit ahead with this, but later in the movie, I don't know if you noticed this, but when she's on the island with Sam, as they're walking up the hill at night, their hands ever so coincidentally just touch, and it leads to holding hands. So while Harry was asking to hold her hand, and he wanted to do it in a way that was spontaneous, the spontaneity came with Sam, who, if you've seen the first movie, and we're in spoiler range now, but is the actual father of Sophie. So I thought that was kind of cool that they showed, and it was very, very clearly done because it was a close up on their hands, accidentally.
It's hey, I'm shouting out, look at this, call back to one of the first scenes in the movie. So I enjoyed that. And then, because then it transitions to, there's a weird transition where they walk out of frame, and then the backdrop becomes a painting, and then we flash forward back into the present again. Another one of those easy transitions.
It's one of
back
those,
and forth.
yeah. And it pops us back into the present. And okay, so but before we get to Waterloo. The song Waterloo. And okay, this is the first of many instances, and granted, we just got done saying Donna's a very independent woman, but this movie was a little rapey.
It had moments. There's some rapey moments in there.
I mean, I get it. When a guy has an attraction toward a female, especially in the 70s, we got to remember this is like 79, 80, there was not a whole lot of discretion.
No.
But it was a little rapey.
I mean, he just flat out said, help me lose my virginity. Like, just put it out there on the table in the middle of a restaurant.
I think of absolutely no reason why we shouldn't spend the night together if you're leaving tomorrow.
Yes.
It's like, and even she's like, that's a little forward.
It was a very rapey moment. And I remember just sitting there looking like, did he really just say that? Is this happening?
And in comparison, he looks like a gentleman compared to Bill during the next song, Why Did It Have to Be Me? But, but Waterloo was done well. It's the first song that I had a lot of recognition for. I'd heard the other two, but maybe in passing. They were familiar to me, but Waterloo, I thought was done well. It was fun. A lot of close-ups, though. From as far as a film standpoint, you had a lot of close-ups on faces in this.
Yeah, I mean, Waterloo was the one song that I was shocked was not in the first movie. Like, it was in the end. It was in, like, the after movie credits and stuff, but I thought this one was really cool because it was just another one of those big chorusy numbers that's very, we're just going to break out into song and dance, and then when it's over, we're going to go back to what we were doing, like we never just sang and danced the song. Yeah. Like, those are my favorite in movie musicals, but just in musicals in general. So,
wasn't there a thing in Love, Simon where they did that?
Yes.
That was great. Yeah, that was funny.
So, they started dancing, and it was adorable. It was absolutely adorable. I thought it was really well done. But you're right. There's a lot of in your face moments. Like, you are right there with those people. It was interesting.
Yeah, I liked Waterloo. What was cool about it is you had everybody in it. Like you said, it's a chorusy styled number, and they had a handful of these. But this is the first one that we had in the movie that really incorporated hey, this is a musical, because musicals are, flash and flare and things like that. This really played that up.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed the fact that they incorporated Waterloo because they were in France. Like, they really had to write themselves into this song, but it didn't feel like forced until you break it down and you're like, oh, so she had to go to France for them to have Waterloo. There had to be a statue of Napoleon for this to make sense. Like, it was fine in the movie, in the moment. You didn't really overthink it.
I didn't even think about it that way, but yeah, they definitely had to write themselves into that corner to be able to use that song.
Because, I mean, you think of the actual lyrics to that song and you're like, that's not one of those that you're like, oh, this could really make sense in a lot of different situations.
No.
I mean, especially if it's like kind of a jukebox musical style, you gotta figure out a way to make
incorporate that, and it has to be specific, because you're right, the lyrics are very much like, very literal.
Yeah. And then we find out that, afterwards, very shortly, they cut to that night, and Donna has slept with Harry. And it's the awkward, laying, and he's asking, was it good? And then don't answer that. She's like, it was fine. Like, yeah.
Did she say it was lovely, or it was beautiful? Or
I think she said it was lovely.
Yes, and that's code word for it was short. So I thought that was really funny. I really enjoyed him saying, how was it for you? No, don't answer that. Like, all in one breath.
Like, and it's the immediate reaction of, I don't want to know the answer to that. It could be wonderful, but I don't care. It could also not be wonderful. And that would,
yeah.
So she is leaving the next day. She's continuing this, and she goes, and this is where we get my favorite character of the entire movie, for the first time, is they're on the docks, on the piers, and Donna is trying to leave, on the ferry to get to the island. Mm-hmm. She's running late, and she whips out her passport, and it's the guy's name from the actual movie. I don't think he actually he's just the Greek custom officer, but It's Omid Jalili. You've seen him before if you've seen, he's a comedian actually, but some of the other things that he's been on, let's see here, I'm trying to think of things that you guys might have seen. Is that TV? That's television. That's why I'm not seeing anything. He was in The Love Guru. He was in Sex and the City 2. He was the voice of the tiger in Over the Hedge. He was in Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow. Gladiator. He was the slave trader in Gladiator, and you remember the guy who's like beating the crap out of Russell Crowe before he trades him away. But he's funny. He is not
very funny. It's a small little bit part that they they kind of beat to death after a little while, but it's really funny, and it comes back later in the movie. But he does that part really well.
Oh, it's fun. Like, you don't expect a character that doesn't even have a real name to leave a lasting impression.
Yeah.
But they give him enough attention. And he basically sees in the passport, Donna's hair is shorter. She's grown it out. And he says that he prefers it shorter. And she's like, "Oh, okay, great, thanks, but I gotta go." So he gets the stamp and she runs off, and that's where we meet young Bill.
Young Bill. Mm-hmm.
Talk about rapey. This was bad. This is the worst part of the movie.
This is the rapiest part, I think. But, oh, God, he's just so pretty. He is so pretty to look at. So she's running down the dock, and I don't remember... That's not when she doesn't fall. No, that's later when she falls into his arms. She misses the ferry. She yells after the ferry, "You can turn back. It's not too late." Yeah. Which I was like, okay, let's talk about this movie being self-aware a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really funny. But she turns around, she meets him, and he, he's talking to her, and he jumps on this boat that just happens to be conveniently right there onto the pier, and she goes, "Well, if there just happened to be someone with a boat that could take me to the island," he turns and he says, "Oh, this isn't my boat. I just wanted to impress you."
And you can tell, like, the idea of, like, she's like, "Oh, okay." Like, she completely falls for the fact that he wasn't. He's like, "No, I'm kidding. It is my boat." But yeah, I have to say, this is the other guy who I felt was the best portrayal of their counterpart.
Yes.
They're older. He looks like a young Stellan Skarsgård.
Yes,
very
absolutely.
much so.
Their facial features. This is really weird, but the fact that their eyes are extremely close together, both of them, it was like spot on.
And the same color too, like the piercing bluish gray.
I was like, okay, I see you, casting department, I see you. But it was really because then we just go onto the boat, and he takes her below deck and says, "There's 2 beds, but one is currently occupied." I mean, it just has a whole bunch of crap on it, and the only one that's available is his bed. And I was like, oh my, is this happening? Like, is this actually happening? Like, this is one of those rapey moments that you're like, oh.
Yeah, you're a little uncomfortable. And she's like, "Oh, how convenient." Like, the thing is the movie's aware of how uncomfortable some of these situations are.
Yes.
And not only are they aware of it, but they call it out, because multiple times, Donna says that she never does this. Like, she's not the kind of person to just run off with any random guy. But yet, in 3 different situations, over the span of maybe a week,
at the most,
it's maybe like 4 days. But yeah, she's done this with 3 guys, which is kind of one of those running jokes.
Yeah, I mean, that's how she got into the predicament that she ended up in, with being pregnant, spoilers, and not knowing who the father is. So
exactly.
It really does show that, yeah, I can definitely see how she got into that situation.
Yeah, and so the next song is "Why Did It Have to Be Me?" Is kind of an interesting play, because it is, at first it's a little comedic, because he's playing this idea of, like, why does it have to be me to be the one to meet you and, like, fall in love and have to deal with, losing a losing a potential love. Then it's comedic in the fact that she says there's 2 kinds of seducers: the one that hates women altogether and uses the power over them, or the one that truly, it very truly believes that they fall in love every night, but then they fall out of love the next morning. And he's like, "Oh, like this?" And he starts going on about it. And he gets kind of grabby in that part too.
He's very forward. And I mean, that might just have to do with the character.
It could be.
But, I mean, just very much like, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to mimic your moves. And, she sits down. He sits down right next to her. She moves over. He follows suit, and over. Like, it keeps happening. And, I mean, it's very rapey.
This was the scene that was the worst.
Yes.
As far as that goes. But then it does cut over to young Harry, who is on the docks trying to catch a ferry, because he says that Donna had this lady, a young woman that he spent the night with, has left a very, very nice goodbye letter, one that he's just like, I have to go for it. But he also starts singing the same song, and it's the same lyrics, but it changes because now it is someone who potentially could have fallen in love, and he believes that he has. But we do get our customs officer again. This time, though, he's like, the hair was he had it shorter than it was, and he's like, I liked it longer. Yeah,
he always likes the opposite. He likes what he sees in the passport pictures,
yes,
versus what he sees in real life.
Exactly.
So funny, just a funny little bit character. I love it.
And then so this takes us after Why Did It Have to Be Me? She gets to the actually before she gets to the island, because this is important.
This is very important.
This actually kind of breaks up the potential sexual assault that we were about to see. We hear a yelling, and they're out in the middle of the water at this point, and they go up and they see this gentleman, Alexio, I believe his name was.
Yes, that sounds right.
And he is on this little skiff boat, like little motor
smaller
boat.
Than a little dinghy. Like, it's tiny. It looks like a toy boat.
It really does.
It really does.
With essentially the kind of motor that you have when you're trying to like go around, if you've ever gone fishing, the one that basically can take you very, very slowly around the reeds. I don't remember what it's called, but it doesn't seem like it's going to get him anywhere. And it's broken. And so they both decide, oh, of course we're going to help, because he's trying to get his love, who wants to marry the poor fisherman, but is being forced to marry the rich, fat, aristocratic character.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, absolutely. There's no question.
Well, not really. It was more of...
Well, she says, yeah.
She says, yeah. He's more like, well, you can figure it out. Again...
We'll go back down to the deck.
We're going to go back down to the deck, and I'm going to continue to try to have my way with this woman. And then it cuts to... you see the love of his life, in a wedding dress and everything. He jumps out of his little boat, because they're tugging it along. Or, no, he was on the main boat. He jumps off the boat into the water and... Can't swim. And I'm just like, how do you live that close to water and you can't swim, first of all? So he's yelling for... I forget her name. It's something weird. But he's got water stuck in his throat. And so...
Apollonia.
I was like... something I knew it had something to do with like a food. I heard apple and...
Yep.
Okay. But they yell to... And I don't... There's no way in reality that you could be that far out on a boat and somebody would hear you on the mainland. Like, there's no freaking way. Yes, they're yelling, but it doesn't work that way. So they're like, he loves you, he loves you. So she just decides, well, I'm going to go rescue him. And she runs off in a very Baywatchy, slow-mo running moment of this full body dress. And when I mean full body dress, like, she had this headpiece that came like from her shoulders, like over her head. Like, all you saw were her face and her hands. You saw nothing else. She runs, jumps in the water. They connect, and then they realize they can't swim. So Bill removes his shirt, which I'm not complaining.
He's like, I don't think either of them can swim. So he pops his shirt off and jumps in.
Right in and goes in and saves them. And it's a little mini happy ending there in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, and this gets Donna. Then afterwards, so they've gotten those two together. He drops her off. He says, "I'll be back in 3 weeks. I've got a boat race that I've got to do, or sailing race. But I'll be back in 3 weeks to see you." And they're both like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, there's really no...
Yeah, it was a very amicable, hey, I'll see you later kind of thing, which I thought was pretty cool. And then we kind of cut to her exploring the island a little bit, because we finally make it to the island.
Oh yes. And then so we jump back to the present timeline, and Sophie is coming to, or she's getting things together for this opening night, and this is where we have Rosie and Tanya show up. And they show up, and there's really not a whole lot of character development in this, and these two characters are no exception. Rosie is the overly emotional, kind of goofy one. And Tanya is the sex-driven. And okay, let's just be honest. Anytime that Christine Baranski is in a movie, it seems like she is always like
she's a sex-driven cougar. Like, let's call a spade a spade.
Yep, that's what she's doing.
Well, so we get to this point, and they're talking as, Tanya and Sophie are talking, and it's like, don't mention... something about not mentioning Donna, because every time somebody mentions the name Donna, Sophie starts crying. And it's not like I'm going to just start bawling. It's just one of those,
Yeah.
Like, it's just hilarious.
Well, I think what was the specific line, and because it's important for later, this whole, like, crying at the mention of Donna.
Yes.
But yeah, she's like, well, just, we need to make sure that she doesn't have somebody who's crying every time we hear the word
That's
Donna.
What it was, yeah.
And then she says the name Donna in that sentence.
It takes a second, and Sophie kind of turns her head off to the left and just starts...
Yeah.
You could just... Tanya's got sunglasses on, but you can just tell she's rolling her eyes. Oh, God, here we go again.
Right? There you go.
They said it. They said the title.
Did they say it in this?
And they say it in the lyrics to Mamma Mia.
Yeah, I guess. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I was thinking if it was outside of that. But so they get to the island and they start. She's basically like Sophie is going to show Rosie and Tanya around. So here's what I've done. Like they're here for the opening.
Yes. And
she starts to show her around, and as she's doing this, we get a cut to the first time that Donna was in the farmhouse on top of the hill.
Yeah.
It's really, I actually liked this.
This is one of my favorite parts of the movie because you get the contrast and you get to see they go through literally the same places in the same building, obviously at different times. And it's really cool how it's done, how they piece it together. And it's one of my favorite songs. I Have a Dream. And it's very powerful. So this is one of the songs that was kind of pushed off to the side from the first movie because it's the one that opens the movie with Amanda Seyfried's character, singing that out into the water. But it's nice to have this like a full. This is
the whole song,
the full moment of this song, and just to go through, just to see the renovations, 1970s Donna sliding down the banister, and the whole staircase comes crashing down to. The opening of the window and the entire right side of the window pane just shatters.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens. I was looking at it. I was like, okay, now I can understand if it like fell off.
Yeah, but it
when
exploded.
She opened it, it exploded and then fell to the ground.
Yes.
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
I enjoyed that, but it was just it was an emotional moment for the present day with Sophie and Tanya and Rosie going through and just seeing all the work that had been done because. If you remember from the first movie, there were a lot of issues. Donna was always fixing something. Something was broken. She was always gluing down something on that little dolphin thing on the floor.
Yep.
It was always something, but to see it completely redone and all just up to date, it was a very beautiful moment.
Yeah, and I liked it because it showed you that we're in the same place, and you really got to see you got to appreciate at least what the character had done in Sophie to make this what it was. Because you see, like, they had a really cool transition where you're in the one room that they first walk into, and it pans, and as it pans, it starts to, like, chip away. You see the paint that's chipped away, and we're back in the past where, in this room, where Donna first walked in, and I think it was Tanya who made the reference of how did she see all this, leave it to Donna to see all this potential in a place like this, and it was a good way of showing us kind of the entire farmhouse in two different ways and connecting the mother and daughter in a way that we don't get a whole lot of.
Yeah, that was one of the first real moments of where these two characters, Donna and Sophie, really connect. And obviously they connected a lot in the first movie, but just how their paths are very similar. Like I said, it was a really beautiful moment. I liked it.
And this is where, so it's as the end of I Have a Dream, we start to see there's a rainstorm that begins. And so as Sophie is kind of scurrying to try to save everything, in the past we see Donna, and also there's a storm that begins. And we have to mention, before this, it's down on the docks when Tanya and Rosie show up in the present timeline. That Andy Garcia's character of
Senor Cienfuegos.
Yes.
Mr. 1,000 Fires or something like that.
Yeah, he is. I'm trying to see. Cienfuegos, and which is it's Andy Garcia, and he gives the most, like this movie you will really enjoy if you like the cheesiness in movies. He has this like looking up into the sky moment, and then he like breathes in and he's like, there's a storm on the horizon. Like there's a storm coming.
Yes.
And you're like, all right, but it's the way he says it. It's like
very
like he's a wizard.
Like it's very omnipotent. Like one of those moments, and you're like, okay, but also what's kind of funny is they play it in the past too, because when Bill goes to leave, he says, "Storm's coming."
Yep.
And then Donna's like, "It's a beautiful sunshiny day." Like
she's like, "Believe me," and they say he stops. He goes, "Wait, no, don't believe me." But there's still a storm.
Yes.
Which I thought was a funny thing.
Yeah,
that's a character.
So the storm's happening, and which, by the way, this storm rolling in was not believable. It went from sunny and beautiful to dark in 2 seconds flat.
It was drastic.
It was not like, oh, let's shoot this scene like maybe a little bit darker. Like, hey, maybe some clouds have rolled in.
There was a filter over the
it
immediately
went from sunshine to like tornado in 2 seconds. It was ridiculous. But you've got Sophie rushing to try and save some things because they've put up all these decorations and all these flowers and everything looked beautiful. But it all got destroyed. And in the past, you've got Donna. It starts off just kind of dancing in the rain, very, very free spirited. And she hears something coming from downstairs, and rushes down and comes to find a horse. Which I was like, what?
Yeah, where did this horse come from?
Where did this horse come from? But he's essentially trapped. Apparently, this horse can buck so hard that the entire building starts crashing down around him. Which I was like, okay, now we're pushing some things.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
That was one of those moments that you're just like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the horse, granted, okay, this is a dilapidated old house, but still, it basically pulls down the one support beam for the entire second floor. But then I don't understand this, because the damage that was done when that happened seemed pretty drastic.
Yes.
But then there was no mention of that in the old timeline ever. Like, she didn't have to fix anything. She was living there. And this looked like this was a condemned building, let alone one that you could live in. I don't know. That was kind of a weird, let's just ignore it.
Yeah, it was this is happening. Let's just don't shed any light on it. It didn't make any sense to me. But
so, yeah. And so as she sees that this horse is there, she says, "Hey, hold on. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back." She says that to the horse.
Is she freaking Dr. Dolittle? Like, I don't get it.
She runs upstairs and just so happened to be coming up the drive, which is weird because I don't know why he was coming up the drive.
No idea.
It's not a throughway. Like you're going straight up driveway.
End up in that area. Like I know he says later that he lives in a shack on the hill, but
maybe that's where he was living.
Well, we'll get to this in a minute, but I'm pretty sure that little shack on the hill has to be near that farmhouse because that's where Pierce Brosnan was staying.
It's true.
It's the same room, so that probably is close by to the farmhouse.
That's true. So she goes down, and it's young Sam, Pierce Brosnan's character, and Sam goes and helps her save the horse, and then they end up at a kind of a restaurant, a bar in town the next day. Well, it has to be the next day because
that was all at night.
It was night, yeah. So it's the next day, and this is where we see "Kisses of Fire" sung by I can't even remember the guy's name. Is it Lazarus? I think.
I don't remember
oh my gosh, this guy is doing a very funny, but not meant to be funny, just a passionate rendition of this song,
yes,
but with a very heavy Greek accent.
Yes, and
very
almost forced. It's very comedic, and this is where we meet again one of my most favorite characters of this movie too, his mother.
Oh yeah,
she's so funny.
She's the sassy Greek mother that you've seen in any stereotypical like My Big Fat Greek Wedding,
oh my God,
or just
yes.
very very fun character. She had one of my favorite lines of the movie when she said, "That's karma," and it's spelled or it's pronounced ha.
That was my favorite part. I love that she just went on Sam later on in the movie.
That was absolutely
really
fantastic.
Good. But this scene, so he sings a song. And Donna's very like, this band is awesome. They're great. And she's whooping and cheering. The only one. I mean, there's like three people.
I think three. And they're two of the three.
Yes. In the bar. And he comes over. I think he comes over and talks to him.
Well, because she asks, who's the owner of this? Are you the owner of this establishment? She goes, no, I just, that would be my son. And she points to him because he had to buy a place to sing because no one else would let his band play.
Yeah, so he just pulls up a chair with Sam and Donna and starts talking, and she talks about how she's a singer, and sometimes she would want to know if her band could perform there. Well,
and that was something that she had said earlier in the movie before she left. It was kind of one of those things of, yes, I'm leaving, but I'm also going to put out feelers while I'm out because like they wanted to continue performing.
Right.
And this was like her kind of remembering that, I think, for a half second. She's like, well, they're singing. I would love to sing with my friends here.
And then her, the Dynamos can come and sing and perform there. And she goes into a rendition of
Andante and Dante.
That's what it is. This was weird. I didn't feel like this was the place for that song.
No.
It was forced. Again, another one of those I feel like they wrote themselves into a corner just to use the song.
Yeah, it felt that way. And then you had this very stereotypical, like, the band behind her listens to a verse, and then they know all the ways to come in, and they're singing with her.
Pick it up.
I mean, yes, suspension of disbelief here. I get it. But it was also, like, they were singing backup, and... like, I can believe it. If you're a really good musician, you can kind of jam with somebody if you hear a few different chords that are in the song. And you can go with it.
If you understand the chord progression, you can jump in.
Yes.
But this was the full orchestration. Again, suspension of disbelief, whatever. But
I mean, here we are also, like, not having issues with an entire restaurant breaking out into song and dance during Waterloo. But we're like, but this band,
though, we're so contradictory.
Like, they knew the lyrics and everything.
Yeah, that's so funny because it's so true. But that's just the magic of musicals.
That's all it was. And she's like, hired, absolutely. So she gets hired. But she also says something in their conversation that she wants to stay here. Mm-hmm. And she says, when are you leaving and going back to your old life? A little bit of foreshadowing there. And Sam's like, I'm in about a week. He's leaving a week. And so the next thing we see is after they're singing, they're done singing, we see them, is it The Name of the Game? Is that the song?
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's our next song, and that's what's happening next. His Name of the Game pops in, and they start singing that, and that gets them to the house.
Yes.
And that's where we have us where we talked earlier about like them holding hands. And there's this insinuation that then they slept together that night.
Because they're in the same bed. He's laying there without a shirt on. Like, if you've seen a movie, in the past 20 years, you can read those cues and figure out, yes, that had happened. So
they sleep together that night. The next day, they're out on the a boat, and he's going to take her out to. There's
a little island out there, and
he's like, we're gonna have a little picnic.
And she asks, we don't have any food. And he says, you're going to catch it on the way. And then they start this conversation of. Around what is it around? I don't remember.
That she says, you need to listen to me. I'm going to say something that you're going to think is going to sound crazy, but it may not sound crazy in the future. She's like, I wasn't lying yesterday when I said I want to stay here, and I think you need to stay here too. Yeah. And he's really good at what he says. He basically doesn't say that he's going to stay or leave, but he says that's not a crazy idea.
Yeah,
he's just like, you're not crazy.
Yeah, he just he's essentially supportive because, as we learned here in a few minutes, he has reasons to leave. But
and her line to respond, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is my conditioning to this movie, but she says, "That'll do," and I'm like, "That'll do, pig.
That'll do, pig.
That'll do.
That'll do." I said the same thing.
I just heard that, and I'm like, I don't think I can ever hear the phrase "that'll do" without thinking of Babe.
No.
But yeah, so she's like, "All right, that's good enough for me now." And then it goes back to them, and they're laying in bed. It's the next morning, I believe, and she starts to sing, and she goes, and okay, at the same time, this was amazing. So she's like prancing in a field of orange trees.
Oh God, that was terrible.
She's gonna make him some breakfast, and she needs more oranges for orange juice. She goes out to this field and does cartwheels in this very flowy hippie gown.
Yes, and she climbs an orange tree, pulls a couple oranges, falls out of the trees somehow, klutz, and she runs into a goat. And she has a standoff with this goat and makes faces, and she makes a face of the goat, and the goat charges at her and chases her through the field.
Here's the funniest part for this movie. So I'm sitting next to Jordan, and I lean over to her, and she leans over to me, as we're both going to say something. At the same time, we're like, is she going to fuck the goat? Because she's been sleeping with everything she meets, and we both said it at the same time.
Oh my god, you two are awful.
It was just like, oh man.
I could tell that she was going to make the face of the goat, because, I mean, it was just... They kept doing the close-up.
But they did the back and forth between her and goat. And I was
like,
she's going to come onto this goat.
I was like, she's just going to make the face, and then, or she's going to, like, bleat at it and go, meh, or whatever. And apparently she does that, and then it chases her. Like,
yeah.
What?
It was weird. And so then the next thing we see is she's back in the house, and she's all excited. She's in love, and she's gonna make some breakfast and continue making her orange juice. Mm-hmm. She pulls open a drawer, and in it is kind of like a journal, like a leather-bound journal. And poking out of it's a picture. She pulls it out, and there's a picture of Sam and another young woman.
Beautiful woman.
And immediately we get this kind of sharp cut to, she's like telling him to leave, and he's like, just listen, like, no, let me explain. She asked him 3 questions. Are you engaged? Did you tell me about it? What was the third one?
Are you going back to her? Was that it?
I can't remember. Are you engaged? And he said yes. He said, did you tell me about it?
He said no.
He said no. I think it is. Are you going home to her? Like, do you have any intention of leaving her? And he's like, I'm staying with her. She's like, great, leave.
Yep.
And that's what gets us into our next song, which is Knowing Me, Knowing You.
Yes. I don't remember this part too
So
well.
This was one where basically she's packing, or she's kind of like getting her things together. He's packing, and as he is leaving on the boat, she's at the tree, foreshadowing, because she keeps touching her stomach, like crazy during this song.
It's so obvious.
But she's touching her stomach, and she goes out onto like watch his boat leave, and she can see him, and he can see her, and he leaves, and it's basically just the song about the fact that I know who I am, I know who you are, and it's just not going to work. Right. Like this is it. We're not going to be able to do this. And clearly, it makes sense with the idea that if he is engaged, they have slept together at this point. He is engaged. He wasn't going to tell her about it. Mm-hmm. She's not comfortable with that.
The one part that I remember happened right before this song. We're back in the present, and a conversation of Sam and Sophie, and Sophie's very stressed out because Sam's the only one that's actually on the island at this point. Her other 2 dads are not there. Mm-hmm. So they're having a conversation, and Sophie says, I just want to make my mom proud. And Sam says, there's nothing that you could do that she would not be proud of. And Sophie asks, why? How do you know that? Because
you couldn't let her down.
You couldn't let her down because I let her down once. And that was one of those moments that I was like, that hurts.
He's like, I know what it feels like to let her down, and this is not letting her down.
Yeah, I really like the there's nothing you could do that would let her down, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, and in that little sequence too, we also find that because of that storm, there's really no opening.
Yes,
the band can't get there, even
there's no ferries.
Because there's no ferries.
There's no flights into Athens. There's nothing, like just this random freakazoid storm. That stops everybody from showing up.
Yeah, and so that kind of shows us this another like there's a lot of these little mini conflicts throughout. This is another like, hey, they've got this huge grand opening, but a reopening, and it's not going to work because no one can get there.
Right.
I think this is a pretty good place for our break.
Yes.
We're going to be getting into like a secondary shift because now that we've worked through the past stories of all of the men, we are finding out more about her and what she's going to do, Donna, in the past. So this is a perfect time for us to take our break. Go ahead, and as we are going to refill our drinks, you should do so as well. Get some more popcorn, grab some Jujubes and Sour Patch Kids, or I don't know, they got those little Airhead roll-up things I saw today.
Airhead roll-up?
I don't know. It's like Airheads meets Fruit by the Foot meets Sour Straws or whatever they are. I don't know. Go get some candy, guys. And while you are doing that, we're going to see what is coming up soon from Eventide.
Oprah's Book of the Month Club, please. we've got something much better in store for you.
Let's talk about books. The energy is right. I got a candle going. It feels good.
Every Monday morning, Jessica Gillen sits down and talks with you about the very best in books and literature.
Murder on the Orient Express, The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, The Cruel Prince.
It's The Bookseller, every Monday morning, brought to you by Eventide Entertainment. If there's one thing that's true about wrestling fans, it's how much they like to talk about wrestling. Join Aaron Lopez and Ben Norsworthy for the Top Rope Wrestling Podcast.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Tune in every episode and be ringside as these two break down all of the big matches in the world of professional wrestling. Brought to you by Eventide Entertainment.
All right, welcome back, guys, to the Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again edition of the Drive-In. We just got done talking about the third of the suitors for Donna. Sam has a fiance. Sam has left the island, and now you have Tanya and Rosie in the past timeline who have shown up to sing, actually, because this is kind of more like, hey, this bar's going to let us sing, this restaurant's going to let us sing. So she gets them to come, and the timeline kind of like works so that it was maybe a day or two after this breakup, if not the day of.
I think it was it might have been like the day after or something, but yeah, it all lines up, and you have this really dorky shot of them riding up the hill on a mule, and they have a pack mule carrying all their luggage, and for some reason Rosie's facing backwards.
She's holding onto the rope that is holding onto the donkey. That donkey was like, he was fighting. His neck was like completely, he's like pulling.
There was like 10 bags on him. Like, it was ridiculous to watch that. And I mean, it was a funny moment, but I was like, that poor donkey.
Yeah.
He's probably so tired. And then they're talking about, we're going to perform in front of all of these people and the lights and the shining. And then a jump cut straight to them sitting in that little bar that we were at earlier with one person at the bar.
And he's asleep at the bar.
Yes.
And then you've got the owner and the mother, and that's it. And they're trying to cheer her up. It's not working, but they're like, well, let's sing. Try to sing something. And Donna's like, it's hard to sing about love when I'm just not feeling it.
Yes.
She's like, okay, well then sing about what you do feel. Sing about, what you know and what you can do right now. So she starts singing Mamma Mia, which the first lines to that is, I was cheated by you and I think you know why. So, I mean, this was good writing into the storyline. It makes sense.
This version of Mamma Mia makes sense into the plot so much better than the first one did.
Oh, yeah.
Because the first movie was just,
It was because it's the name of the damn...
Exactly. They want to put it in there in the first, 4 songs of the movie. But this worked. And Donna sings the first couple lines a cappella. This was...
this was in the trailer.
This was in the trailer.
Yeah.
They prelude to this in the trailer. But as they go along, the girls jump in and, the full Dawn on the Dynamos moment, and then all the people come in, and they have it was a really good performance of Mamma Mia. I liked it. It was not one of those crazy over the top numbers, but it was still a really well produced number, and it looked really cool.
Well, and the motive behind it, I think, has a lot to do with it. It's more believable to hear it in this context than it was in the first, so it's a little bit cooler, especially when the pace and the tempo starts to quicken, and you get a little bit more volume behind it, and it's not this like sad, weepy, oh woe is me song. It's more a song of empowerment.
Yes,
and it kind of transitioned in that, and that was cool. This was one of my favorite songs in this, just because of that way in which they portrayed this this character development. It really was, for Donna, a strong moment of character development, because up to this point she was playing the oh woe is me. She was still very strong and independent, but she'd gone through some shit, and she was allowing herself to feel bad for a while about it.
She was expressing her emotions and expressing the anger that she was feeling towards being hurt by Sam with everything that had gone on. So very cool moment. Very cool.
After this, we jump back to the main timeline, because Sophie is having some guy problems herself, as we mentioned earlier. Sky is not coming to help out. he's potentially at this moment still staying in New York, and she starts to talk to Tanya and Rosie about this issue. And this plays us into the next song, Angel Eyes, which is basically a song about, you're going to fall for whatever guys say if you could look into their eyes. Which was, the dance moves in this were literally, you talk about angel eyes, and they would wave their arms like they had wings and point at their eyes.
Yeah, it was not a shining choreographical moment.
This is rough.
Very literal. It must have been one of the last ones that they did, but yeah. Still a good song, though. It's still, I like the song a lot. Anything with Tanya and Rosie, like the adult versions,
This was my favorite one with Rosie, because she was like a step behind every time.
Yes.
And you this was purposeful, but as a character, but every time they do like choreography, like Sophie, Tanya, Rosie, and like a lot of the ensemble, they'd all be all together, except for Rosie would be like one of those people when you go into like a dance class and you are watching people do the choreography and you're doing it behind them.
Yes.
It was hilarious.
It's so funny.
And then they do the lifts over the table and then no one's there to lift her, and she just like sits on it.
She sits on it, and then two guys come along, terrify her, and because they lift it and they turn it. What I loved about this song, so before, so it's after Mamma Mia, we cut to, Bill shows up on the island. Bill comes back. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, he comes back on the island. And you see, Sophie and Tanya.
He's not on the island yet. He's in Greece trying to get to the island.
No,
because we have the sequence where he's there and he and Harry meet up. And that's where they tie themselves down, or Harry ties.
No, we're talking in the past.
Oh, in the past.
This is in the past. He shows up on the island.
Yes,
because
sorry.
They're talking about cake. So,
cake.
Because this is how it ties into Angel Eyes. Those two are out on the patio talking, and she's like, after all this stuff, then a beautiful man shows up, and Sophie's all about Bill, so obviously it's foreshadowing for the future. But she's like, every time my heart gets broken, all I want is cake. And there's just they just talk about cake for a good 5 minutes straight. And then you have about 3 or 4 cutscenes during Angel Eyes where there's cake on the table, or Sophie's eating cake, or there's something cake related. I was like,
even at the very end, the song's over and she grabs a piece of carrot cake and she's eating it.
She's just eating it. It was really funny.
Yeah, that was great.
I like that moment.
And so, yes, on the island in the past, yes, we have Bill comes back. He catches her. Yeah, that was what we were talking about.
Yeah, because she falls.
She gets Rosie pushes her off, accidentally, but pushes her off the bar. And Bill's there to pick her up, or to catch her. And then this is where we see, out of nowhere, Sam shows back up too.
Yeah, he comes back,
and this is it's funny because they don't know who he is. But Rosie and Tanya are there and they see him, and Tanya is she's feeling him.
Uh-huh.
She is coming on to him and talking to him, and all of a sudden he the mother is like, oh, I know you. And so then he continues past and talks to her. That's where we get the karma line.
Yes.
And then he leaves, and she's basically Tanya's trying to get Rosie to stop talking about cake and start living and everything. And
this whole thing with Sam happens.
She gets kind of shut down, but Sam doesn't even, on the way back, he just walks right past him.
Yeah, completely ignores him.
Well, I try to remember the line. She's like, it's the first time, she's like, I am not disappointed with your visual outlook, or something she says something really it's kind of weird and awkward, but I half caught it, half didn't. But it's a funny line that she says about how she's attracted to him, but she doesn't just come out and say it that way. But then she gets shut down by him, and she's like, "Where was the cake again?" And she's like, "Back there." Oh,
let's go.
Yeah. So that all happens kind of right before Angel Eyes, and then we get through Angel Eyes, and Angel Eyes basically is the last song of kind of major conflict, really. Mm-hmm. I would say, because you right after Angel Eyes, you see them all come up together, and that's where I'd kind of mentioned. You've got, in the present timeline, Bill and Harry. We cut away from the major Greek island setting, and we see Harry in Tokyo.
Yep.
And he legitimately was in the meeting. He couldn't get away because there's this big meeting in which two companies were merging.
Yeah, this big business thing, and it cuts to them talking about a contract, and you see him asleep, and they're like, "Oh, I know it's not very exciting, blah blah blah," and then it's the moment where he realizes that he has more important things to him than this business stuff, and he just up and leaves.
He has a cool line. He says, "What's the point of climbing the ladder when you're on the wrong building?
Yeah, when you're on the wrong wall."
Well, the wrong wall.
Yeah, I really like that. I was like,
which is cool.
It's very good.
But you don't hear that before. I've never heard that before.
No.
But like climbing the corporate ladder. So then we go over, and this was weird to me because I didn't get what they were doing, and I was like, "What the hell happened?"
I was
Bill?
like, he let himself go.
But we go over to Sweden. And it actually too. So what they were saying is the reason why Bill couldn't be there was Sophie says earlier when Tanya and Rosie show up, he's winning an award for being the world's most famous Swede, or like something funny like that.
Weird.
And he is. He's winning an award, and he gets called up, and it's basically Bill in a fat suit. I mean, this guy he's got a neck that is like two people's arms together. It's a huge, like he's a large man.
Yes, a very, very large man, and he's up accepting the award, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm like, did he really let himself go that far?
Well, and I just was thinking to myself, like, okay, I had seen him recently, and I'm like, okay, I knew the actor himself wasn't, so I'm like, but why'd they make him fat? Like, why is... They didn't, so there's a reason. So he's actually... So as Bill, quote, air quotes, Bill is giving an acceptance speech, his mother's phone rings, and it says Bill's cell. And I was like, what's going on?
I was confused, too.
And you see Bill in his car, and it's his twin brother that we've never heard of before until now. This is just stupid writing. They didn't, work themselves into a corner, because they could have done anything.
They could have done anything. They just were like, well, this is just we just need to get through this moment really fast, so let's just say that he's going to have his twin brother accept the word on his behalf, or as him, actually. Yeah. And then, so Bill can run off, and his mother says something that's like, switching places to cheat on your math test is one thing, but this is like a whole new level, which I thought was really funny.
And Bill gets his own very important family line, is he's like, I'm just never really important, family's more important.
Yeah.
And it's cool because and the mom's not upset. He's like, but he does ask, he like, has so-and-so said the as long as he doesn't tell the goat story, we'll be good. And as it cuts out of the scene, he's like, I got a story for you. It involves a goat. And then you're like, oh, okay. We don't know. It's one of those unanswered questions of what is this goat story.
It's probably that same goat from the island.
The goat from the island.
Oh, my God.
Bill screwed the goat. Donna didn't. That's why the goat was chasing. Oh, my God.
Can we not talk about goat screwing anymore?
So this is where, they're very Sophie's very upset. She's like, well, no one's going to be here. We're fixing this all up, but this party, this opening is all for naught. Looks like it's going to just be us. And Pierce Brosnan is standing there, and he's like, well, I don't know about this. And he looks off into the distance, and we see all these boats. Well, we need to go back and talk about these boats. So, as we had mentioned earlier, Bill and Harry both show up at the same dock, with the ferry. And what's his name is still there, the customs officer. And he gets another one of his moments. He looks at Bill and he says, "Time has not been kind to you." Which he's like, you're balding, your face is caving in.
Yeah, stuff like that. And then Harry shows up and he goes, "You, my friend, age well like a fine wine or cheese," or something like that.
It's just like, again, no reason for this guy. Yep. A little humor, but that was it. And so they're like, "I'm sorry, but there's just no ferries." So they go to this bar, and they're sitting down, and you see Harry kind of tie himself down behind. I don't know why he was finishing it up.
It's like he started it, and he was talking about, I've learned over the years, if you have a problem to solve, the best thing to do is to tie yourself down until you solve it.
You can't go anywhere until you solve it.
Yeah, which was like, okay, but do you have to tie yourself to a chair? Have some self-control, man. But it was just weird, and as they're finishing up, a familiar face shows back up that we get to see.
This explains a lot, because when we first saw this guy, so this is Alexio from the beginning when we first met Bill. Alexio looked fake. He looked like he was wearing a wig and a ton of makeup or something. We find out why. Because Alexio shows up again. And the way he reveals himself was awesome. Because he's like, hey, it's you. And I don't know how he recognized him because Bill doesn't look quite the same. No. I mean, he looks familiar, but that guy hadn't seen him in years. Can we just say, too, the character of Bill looks so much older than everybody else in this movie. I mean, he's one of those actors, Stellan Skarsgård, he's an older guy, but he has not aged.
No.
Well.
No, he has not aged like fine wine or cheese.
He is 67.
He's aged like milk.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he is 67. I'm going to look and see how old the other guys are.
I mean, Pierce Brosnan can't be that.
Colin Firth is 57,
okay.
So he's 10 years younger. And let's see, Pierce Brosnan's got to be in his 60s. Let's see.
Has to be.
He is 65.
Okay.
So he's only Pierce Brosnan looks maybe 5 to 10 years younger than Stellan Skarsgård.
Yes, but there's a lot of Botox and plastic surgery that has come along with that. Speaking of plastic surgery and Botox, Cher's coming. So
soon. We got one more song.
Yeah. Well, even in just the 10 years from the two movies, you can tell that they have aged.
And they didn't do themselves a favor by saying, even though it's been 10 years, saying that it's only been 5.
Yeah.
What's the difference of saying that it's,
it had been longer.
10 years?
I mean, maybe the characters, especially like the younger characters, would be in a different place in their lives. But I kind of get that. But I mean, Pierce Brosnan looked good in the first movie, like good, and now he's like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at in the first movie, Sophie is 20.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with her having her first kid at 30?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Other than the fact that maybe if you look at it, you see how old was... I'm trying to see if... it doesn't say. How old Lily would have been, or Lily James' character Donna, the younger Donna would have been. So maybe they wanted the characters to be having their babies around the same age.
I think that was it.
And she couldn't have been 25 because she just graduated college. So she would have been maybe 20 or 21, maybe 22. So they're similar, but...
Not right.
I don't know. They didn't need it to be 5 years. They could have said like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I mean, to help themselves a little bit.
But anyway, so we're at this dock kind of bar, I guess, with open windows kind of thing that floor cutouts in the wall that you could just jump out of and jump into the water.
So, and Alexia comes up and he's like, "Hey, it's you." And he's like, "I'm sorry." And he's like, so he takes a drink. And as he's gargling, choking on this water, he says, Apollonia, which is what he did when he was drowning.
When he jumped in the water. And they're like, oh my gosh, I remember you.
Yeah.
But we don't see Apollonia.
Apollonia was not there.
Did he not explain that? I think he conveniently left that out.
Yeah. Well, and there's a line in a little bit where this bar full of fishermen, men mostly, but also some women, but they said, bring your wives and children, and they're all like, oh. So it's kind of, I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to this party, but you're supposed to bring all of your, okay, so we'll get to that in a second, because there's a moment of questionable race in this movie. We'll get to it. I don't want to jump.
We'll get there.
But so Alexio is a fisherman, still.
Mm-hmm.
And he is talking about how they've all fallen on hard times. There's plenty of fish, but no one wants to buy it, and they're going out and fishing isn't doing anything. And Bill's like, well, do you guys want to go to a party for free, like drink and eat and everything? And he's like, well, yeah, sure. And so that's what gets them there. But all of a sudden, Sky shows up. Well, hold on, before that,
we haven't gotten there yet.
So they're leaving. Everybody's leaving. They're like, all right, we'll go to the party. And Harry's still tied down.
Still tied to the chair.
And he's like jumping around trying to, and falls into the water. Then that's where we see Sky like pop his head like, hey, you need a hand? And then somehow the laws of physics don't matter.
Don't matter in this universe, because he is still like somewhat tied to the chair, and he and the chair are conveniently floating in what is obviously like deep blue ocean waters. No. It doesn't work like that. Like, you would sink. And
we all looked at each other and we're like, he'd be dead right now.
Exactly.
Like, he's drowning.
Oh, yeah. And then you have that cut up of Sky showing up and you're like, oh, yay, he came. He showed up.
Well, and they didn't make a big deal out of it.
No, it was
They were just like, he's there. He's
subtle.
like, you need a little bit of help. And he's like, ha ha ha. It was one of those cheesy moments that you love.
Very cheeky.
So that's what then gets us to when we were out and we see Pierce Brosnan, he's like, oh, it may not be as few people as you think. And he puts the binoculars up to Sophie's eyes, and you see boats and boats of people filled with very white
very
people.
non-Mediterranean, Grecian humans.
All of a sudden, all of their wife and children of all of these very, very Greek bar patrons turned into a bunch of like frat. Basically, it turns into like spring break. They just went.
It's spring break. Yes, 20-something white kids from all across America came together to dance on these boats. Oh, and I looked at that and I was like, "Well, that's real believable." But hey, I mean,
that was rough.
That was a moment where you're just like, "Oh, poor choices." I mean, if you don't pay attention to that fact, this number is great. Yeah. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
But my only problem with it is that you had it in the first movie.
You had it in the first movie.
We need it again. Like, you need it in an ABBA movie, in a Mamma Mia movie.
You do. But I think this one, it's another one of those that they did it completely differently.
They did it very different, yes.
And I think, again, this one worked better because it's... Dancing Queen is the number we're talking about, and it's one of those that you just need to have that suspension of disbelief, full ensemble moment.
Oh, like, yeah. It would basically be like an Act 1 closer if it were on stage right now. In the way in this movie it was
done. Because in the first movie it's done of Donna's upset that all the dads have showed up and the other Tanya and Rosie are trying to cheer her up by singing that song. Mm-hmm. Which, okay, I don't see where the correlation in the second movie relates to the past, but
there's no connection between
this number is done so much better because it needs to be big, it needs to be flashy. Mm-hmm. So I think they were kind of righting some of their wrongs with a couple of these numbers in the movie, and this was definitely one of those that they fixed.
We do have to mention, though, before we get too far from it, because we missed it, is that Pierce Brosnan at one point, as he's consoling Sophie, he's talking to her. It's in that one sequence, I think, right after we find out that he had not cheated, but essentially cheated with his fiance. And he's like talking to her, and he's like hugging her and telling her like, "Go off, and you'll be okay." And he calls her my little dancing queen. And like I was boo.
I like that.
Too cheesy. I was like, oh god. I thought that was gonna be the reference to Dancing Queen. But then later on they have this. I was like, jeez.
I mean, it's too big of a number to not have it. I know it was in the first one, but you gotta have it.
Well, I'm looking at it too, and we're not done yet, but we do have. I'm looking at the first movie. I Have a Dream was in it. It was done differently, but I Have a Dream, Mamma Mia, Dancing Queen, Super Trooper. And that might be it.
I think that was all of the.
Those are four.
SOS is technically in there, but it's in the second one. It's stupid because Pierce Brosnan singing by himself when that number is clearly a duet.
But yeah, I mean, so like they had. But the thing is do you need 4 songs repeated? Like, and the reason why they did this one is because of the financial success of the first movie.
Right.
And they were like, we have so much more ABBA music to explore. If you have that much more music,
why are you hitting back?
Maybe 1, maybe 2. It felt like
well, I mean, the one, you got a bigger version of it. Mm-hmm. Dancing Queen is their biggest hit of all time.
Yeah, and that one, if that one was going to be in it,
and Mamma Mia is the freaking title song, and then Super Trooper's done in a way that wraps it all up, which we'll talk about in a minute. Yeah. But I think of all the songs they took from the first movie, those are the ones to take.
I'm not disagreeing that I think all of them were done well. I'm just thinking if you're doing this movie because you say there's so much more, there's 16 songs in this movie, and a quarter of them, 1/4 of them are repeats.
Yeah. So
it's just like, I don't know. Either make it, because there were a couple songs that they did. They had 2 songs that were in deleted scenes. That I'm looking at here, I Wonder and The Day Before You Came. Those were both in the movie. One sung by Donna and one sung by young Donna and the Dynamos. So, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't an issue, but it's more of a question.
Yeah.
So they're all there and they're dancing and they're having a good time.
And they're queens.
They're dancing queens all over this.
There's a lot of dancing queens.
And you've got the realization, which is weird because they're all dancing in very close proximity to each other, including Sophie. including all of her dads, include everybody. And all of a sudden, then there's like a pathway where she sees them. And she's like, "Oh my god, you guys came!" And then behind them is Sky.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh my god, Sky!" And she loses her shit. And if you're a crier, you probably got all teary at this moment. And but I just was like, okay. I mean, like, the reveal, but if the reveal is that important, why didn't you do that first and then have them all dancing together?
Yeah, why wouldn't you bring them together, have the reveal, and then finish the number of all of them together?
Yeah, it seemed like it was an odd way to have them all dancing and then be like, oh, but yeah, by the way, you've been dancing with them for the last minute and a half, but now you're going to realize.
I mean, sometimes when you're dancing, you don't really pay attention to those that are around you. I know I don't. So
you just go. You just go
balls.
You were in the moment. You and your little circle of dance.
I mean, especially when you're doing set choreography, you're so focused on making sure you hit them 8 counts. And...
But, okay, here's what I thought was fantastic. As they got off the boats, they changed back to being a diverse race.
Yes,
it was like you saw a ton of people, and you're like, "Oh, okay, there they are."
I think I was more focused on the dude that did a front flip from like the top of the boat, flipped and landed on the dock. I was like, that doesn't seem like that could actually happen.
They were just like, can anybody do any like really crazy like aerobics? This guy's like, I can do a front flip, and they're like, we're gonna put that in the movie.
We're gonna have you front flip off of the boat onto the dock. That sounds real safe. Oh man,
I know. Well, and this is also the moment where this is gonna get me into trouble, but the help start intermingling with the guests.
Yeah.
And you see like all the dancing. But that also at the same point too was probably where we got a little bit more of the diversity.
Mm-hmm.
You had one of the guys, he was like an older gentleman that kind of looked like the uncle, I can't remember his name because I haven't seen this in a long time, but the uncle from Fresh Prince. He was like a skinnier version of him. He had like the beard and the bald head.
Okay, I know you're talking about.
And he was the one right behind him like smiling and dancing. He was getting into it. There were a lot of really strong extras. I will talk in a little bit about non-extra who stole a scene that they weren't supposed to. We'll get to it here in a second. So this then gets us to the next song. Well, everybody's there. They're all having fun. And we see Sophie, Rosie, and Tanya singing I've Been Waiting for You. Trying to remember how that plays in, because the next song after that I know everything about.
Yes, that all makes sense. I'm trying to figure out how this all, because aren't they, this is at the grand opening party.
Yes, and everybody's coming up and they're all,
yes, I'm a little foggy on everything.
I can't remember this one, to be honest. But at this point we do see
Sophie has just told Sky that she's pregnant, because we have this cutaway moment of Sophie in a room and talking about being a little overwhelmed, and runs off, clutching her stomach again. Mm-hmm. And then you flash back to Donna having the same kind of moment, clutching her stomach and running. And then we cut back to Sophie obviously puking into a toilet, and she says, well, I guess we know what that means. She runs out. She goes tells Sky. And they have this moment. Then we come down. Sophie gets up on stage and kind of does like a speech to everyone that's there. Right. And she says, all my life, the only thing I've ever wanted to do was perform with Donna and the Dynamos.
Yes.
So that's when Tanya and Rosie come up, and they begin to sing this song together.
And this is a cool kind of flashback to the first movie where you have the group singing in front of everybody at the hotel.
Yes.
And she doesn't have like a costume or anything, but the other two are all dressed up, and she kind of takes her shawl that she's been wearing, and she kind of uses it as this cape she gets herself in. It's not necessarily about the costume, it's about the concept. Mm-hmm. But it was cool. It was neat to see. And you know, the choreography for it was very simple, but it mirrored very much what the Dynamos, Donna and the Dynamos did. And it was a cool moment as far as like a metaphorical passing of the torch, at least in the storyline.
Yes, I saw that definitely, that she stepped in as her mother, not only with running the hotel and everything else, but stepping in the girl group and being that front and center figure.
Well, and so around this time too, we find out, like you had said, that she's pregnant. She goes to tell Sky, and we're almost there. So we're right after the song.
Yeah, we're not there.
No, we're a little ahead. It's right before the song that we have our big reveal, because she actually watches the song. She says not bad. She listens to it.
No, that is. Oh yeah, you're right. So before that,
yes,
is when the Queen herself reveals herself to this movie.
They're talking, and this is before the moment of her getting sick, and Sophie. And she's talking to Sky as they're getting there, and she's like, "What is that sound?" And you see a helicopter coming up to the island, landing, and then you see the foot get out. Mm. And then after it's after a little bit, he's like, Sky comes up to Sophie, and he's like, "So I've got this surprise for you." And she's like, "I can't handle it anymore.
I hate surprises, all that kind of stuff."
Between the having the opening, then not having the opening, and ever having it again, and everybody showing up, and you being here, and now the pregnancy, can't deal with it anymore. And he's like, "Too late, sorry."
Yeah, sorry about it.
And he points off behind, and you see in the grandest of fashions, with the very well coincidentally placed backlighting, Cher pops up.
Ugh, that bitch knows how to make an entrance. Let me tell you.
And as soon as you see her face, you're like, "Oh, Jesus." Because, yes, it's Cher, but it also... Cher looks younger than Amanda Seyfried right now at this point.
Yes, because she's had so...
Oh, my God.
Cher's well into her mid to late 60s.
She couldn't smile. She tried.
There was no... I mean, from the cheekbones up, there was no emotion. Oh. She could barely smile. So she...
Cher is 72.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Sherilyn. Oh. Cher is 72
Mama
years
called
old.
me Sherilyn.
Oh,
I'll control the Cher impressions. I'm sorry.
I mean, here's what I will say is, in reading some things about it, the writer or director had said there was nobody else that he wanted except for this. He didn't even consider casting anybody else in this role, which is fine. I don't think as many people would have come to see this movie knowing that, or seeing it without Cher. Cher was the draw, because a lot of the people who saw the first one had either been huge ABBA fans, had saw the musical when it toured, had seen the musical in general, and just were so excited for it. And Meryl Streep was your draw. And seeing Pierce Brosnan sing, it was kind of one of those, you had enough people on your own. With this, you just kind of knew there wasn't going to be enough. We didn't have a whole lot of Meryl.
No.
She wasn't going to be the face. You needed something. So it seemed more like a marketing ploy, and I don't care if it was or it wasn't. It felt more like that. She fit the role, but good Lord, she looked like she was in pain, just because it's just without any facial expressions.
Right.
You just can't read behind
There's no
it.
emotion. But so they talk about Cher's character throughout the entire movie. How she lives in Vegas, how she never comes to anything.
The Vegas line.
Which one?
The one where they said she hasn't been seen. They're
outside
talking
of
about
Las
she hasn't been
Vegas.
seen outside of Las Vegas in years, and you're like, that's pretty true.
Yes.
Cher's done plenty of shows down in Vegas.
That was pretty accurate. So they allude to all of these things, and she just walks up. I forget what she said. Something about, you forgot to invite me to.
She says something in.
Let's get the party started or something like that.
Yeah,
and
but
then,
she says something in French or
oh
Greek.
yeah, something bonjour mon ami, like and then she says, "Let's get
you
the party
weren't
started."
invited. That's the best kind of party.
So that's the best kind of party. So what we left out in the beginning. So when I was talking about Sophie writing out all the invitations, she wrote one, and then she wrote out Grandma, and then had it set and ready to go. She grabs it actually off the stack and tears it up and says she never comes anyway.
Yeah, she wouldn't come.
So it's like, okay, Grandma's going to show up, because obviously we all know Cher's in the damn movie. So
well, and then the line of "you weren't invited," well, that's the best kind of party. That's in the trailer.
Yeah,
so we'd seen that.
We
knew
that it's going to happen. But I love Cher so much.
Well, she comes in and they're talking to her, and she's. Basically it's this little bit of just a quick back and forth. She's talking to her saying, like, I'm ready to be...
I'm committed to being a grandmother. With, I mean, not like full air quotes, just, 2 fingers down, like very Cher. I'm committed to be a grandmother. And then somebody walks by and says, great.
Great. No, this is how it plays. She says the grandma line. Sophie says, great. And then it's the guy, the singer from the old, because he comes back to open it up. The old singer who sings the what was the song? Kisses of Fire. And he goes, great grandmother, yes, so happy for you. And she goes in, she's like, how does he know? And this is funny because then you get...
This is also I think it's in the second trailer.
I think so. You get, she's like, I only told Sam because, he's my dad and Sam, and then we get everybody together. No. Was it,
She told
Sky told Sam.
Yeah, she's like, I haven't told anyone. Sky goes, well, I told Sam because he's your father. Sam goes, I told Bill because he's my best friend. And Bill goes, I told Harry for...
I think he thought he deserved to know.
He's the other dad. He deserves to know. And then Harry goes, I told many people. So it's like, whoop, the secret's out.
And so they're not trying to hide it at this point, which I do like the fact that they bring attention to this. They said after the 12 weeks, because that is a big issue for a lot of people, especially first-time pregnancies.
Yeah, especially
pregnancies.
First-time parents, they won't announce anything until they're at that point because you open yourself up to a lot of miscarriages and other issues like that. So, I thought
that was like a social awareness thing that didn't need to be written in, but the fact that it was there and very subtle,
they were conscious of it.
I thought it was cool.
I liked that as well. So, after we do the song, we cut up to Cher did a fantastic costume change. Her hair didn't change, which, I mean, if you know Cher loves her wigs. She can't get enough of them. So fantastic costume change. And she comes up and says, Sophie goes, well, what'd you think? Well, she's like, well, we need to work on your breast support and you were a little pitchy. But that's what I would say, to a young, what did she say? Oh, no, as a non-blood relative or something like that.
Yeah.
And Sophie goes, and as a grandmother, I thought you were fantastic. I could have just exploded.
And she talks about, like, you got glitter in the blood.
You got glitter in the veins. You get that from me. I was like, yeah, Cher. Got glitter in my veins too.
That was great.
I love that line.
And this is where she talked. And I don't remember the conversation of how it got onto to Fernando Cienfuegos, but they mention, you'll have to. Oh no, she goes, I wonder where Sky is. I'll have to ask Mr. Cienfuegos. He would know.
Yes.
And she goes, Cienfuegos. That's a quite a unique name, and. Then he comes out, looks up, and yells Ruby, and she yells out Fernando. And you're like, oh, damn it. Like, because there's this conversation about how he talked to Sophie earlier in the movie saying that, his love is lost, and he's hoping that, things work out for her. And she's like, there's, boats can turn around, which is a cool little flashback.
Turn around, it's not too late.
And so he's like, yeah, boats can turn around. And he's like, not this one. She's never coming back. And so you're like, okay, and you just brush it off as he's another one of these forlorn lovers in this movie. Shows up and that's his long lost love.
It's her grandmother,
and his name's Fernando. So, and we didn't know this until now. And you're like, oh damn it, you know what song's coming up?
You know what's coming next, and then they break out into Fernando,
and you have the longest walk down a set of stairs I've ever seen. Basically, every verse, or every line of a verse was one step for Cher to come down these. And it's basically, honestly, I think it was so you didn't have to have her do more dancing than what she did, which essentially was arm to shoulder, and then some dips,
and a couple leans.
Some leans and dips.
Yep.
But yeah, so they were singing that. And again, that is one of those storylines that you've got to figure out, how the hell do we get Fernando written into it? And I don't want to say they backed themselves into it because this had nothing to do with any aspect of it, and they're just like, we're gonna make him, we're gonna make him Fernando.
He's a character that's written in, and he's right in the first scene,
and you never question it.
He's just there. Oh, they hired him. Then they have that conversation down at the dock, like, I just want you to be happy, and my happiness is seeing you happy, Sophie. Blah blah blah. And then you get to this. It's a very very subtle subplot, and. I mean, if you're going to have Cher in a movie, she's got to have a love interest.
Of course.
Snap out of it.
Oh, she comes in and they do their Fernando. And it's funny because he does mention at one point something about the fireworks. And in the middle of there was something in the air that night. You have all the fireworks go off. And you're like, it's one of the Great Gatsby moments. When you see Leo for the first time. And you're like, oh, okay. And it's Cher singing with Andy Garcia. And Andy Garcia is not a singer, but I'm sure he had to have been pretty excited to be able to sing a duet with Cher.
I mean, who wouldn't? God.
And so yeah, and then that's basically it. You're like, all right, Cher's got a love interest, Ruby and Fernando, and it actually is like that's the end of that night. Essentially, I'm pretty sure. Then we see like this flash of white light, and it says 9 months later, and we are now at the christening or the baptism or
something in the same place, all the way on top of that huge like mountain where the wedding was supposed to take place in the first movie.
Yep.
Well, I mean, a wedding did take place in the first movie, but you get everybody talking about climbing up those stairs. You see all the extras in the background coming up like, oh my gosh, this climb was exhausting. And
which there's two things, or there's one amazing thing about this scene and one that I didn't get, is that you've got the first people up that I can remember are the three dads.
Yes.
And then like the third group of people are Tanya and Rosie. It's like they're a couple behind. They're not. And then it's like all of a sudden Rosie and Rosie's like, oh, it's worth it to see what's at the top. I'm like, They weren't that far apart. If they would have been like the first ones and the last ones, because it seemed like they had no idea that they were next to each other.
It's like they know they're going to be up there. It's like you can see. Yeah, I get that.
It's like, what? Like you guys were within sight. A couple people apart. You could have walked
right, especially timing wise. Like, come on.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. But then the best part is, so you see Cher and Garcia come up and they're talking and they're like, Cher's back with him. And then she talks about her brother. Well, because Rosie's back together with Bill.
Yes.
Because Bill started. He talked to her earlier the night of that party, saying that you're dancing, you're at a party, but you're not actually at the party.
Yes. He says I've been dancing, and this is where that moment of her crying. Anytime anybody says the name Donna, because Sophie's talking about it, and she says Donna, and then you have this pause, and then Bill starts crying the same way that she did, and they get back together, and it's all happy hunky dory.
Yeah, and so so you've got those two are together now. You've got Pierce Brosnan, who's not interested because his love is his daughter now, so he's there. But then you got Tanya. Tanya's got nobody, except this is amazing because Andy Garcia, he's like, oh, my brother, hey, how's it going? And it's like, goddamn Dos Equis guy. Most interesting man alive. Oh my god. I haven't seen, because they swapped him out. I thought he died. I thought that's why they swapped him out.
You thought he died.
I was like, the guy, Jonathan Goldsmith is his name, and he's credited in this as Brother Cienfuegos. He doesn't even have a name. He's just Brother Cienfuegos. But he shows up, and I was like, yes. The guy hasn't been in anything outside of advertising for a long time, but yeah, he just basically. Let's see. In June 2017, he returned to television advertising after being replaced as the most interesting man in the world. He switched to tequila, now doing ads for Astral Tequila. This guy likes his beer, and he likes his tequila. But he shows up, and you're like, yes! I was more excited. I was more excited for him than Cher, because I knew Cher was going to be there. This guy pops up.
This was a nice little surprise at the end.
Pretty neat.
The one thing about this scene that I was like, really? Why is Sophie with the baby the last person up the hill?
And why is she carrying it?
Why is she carrying the baby by herself?
I know we're off in a foreign land and there's this like, wonderful Mediterranean. You're like, oh, this is nice. But you wouldn't carry in all reality, it's going to be in a, what are they called?
A bassinet or
a carrier.
Yeah, something.
Like a cat carrier. No, not like that. But, I mean, you're not going to be carrying this child in swaddling clothes and just like blankets and crap up the entire, like,
huge ass hill,
mile of walk up a hill. Yeah, that was weird. Okay, but they're going to do this, and Cher says, or Sophie starts to cry, and Ruby starts to say, or Sophie's crying because she wanted her mother to be there for this, and Cher goes, she is here, and it's kind of that, yes, in spirit, she's here.
Yes.
And then we see her start to sing. Well, we see young Donna taking Sophie.
They did this. This was cool. Really cool. They did this really well because this was the one moment that I got caught in the flashbacks. So
Jordan did too.
I saw her be like,
she's like, that mother should not still be alive, and I'm like, look at the timeline you're in. Yeah, you really thought you were in the present.
Sophie walks towards the door, and then it cuts to the inside, and because the way that everybody's hairs or the girls' hairs are. They look very similar, and they costume Sophie to resemble a lot of her mother.
Yeah.
Just because the whole idea of taking on her persona, and instead of seeing Sophie come down the aisle, essentially with the baby, it's young Donna because you see the the singer dude and his mother and, and a whole bunch of the other people.
You see Rosie.
You see young Tanya and young Rosie. And then it comes down and you get this pan shot over the baptism bowl, and you just see, current day Donna.
You see Meryl Streep.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that was cool. And then it pans back up and it's actually her. I was like,
Yes.
I did not realize they were actually going to put her in this movie.
So here's where you had a very poor editing because no one caught this. So when you see, it's because, okay, so you got Meryl Streep sitting at the baptismal fountain. She's standing there at the front of the church. And then you see Sophie walking in with her child at the back of the church. And as everybody sits, kind of gets up and looks back toward the back of the church, Cher looks straight at Meryl Streep and gives her oh, hey, yeah, it's Meryl. And then she looks back.
Of course she does.
Everybody else just looks straight back because you're not no one knows that Meryl's there. The only person who actually visually connects with her in any way is Sophie because she feels the presence.
She connects with her mother's presence. Yes.
Cher looks straight at her, and I'm like, no, Cher, no, come on. But she looks right at her and then turns.
I did not see that at all.
And it wasn't one of those things where she also knew that Donna was there. It was just a no. She just looked at Meryl.
She's like, hey, Meryl, welcome to the party.
Yeah, she looks right at her and then looks back. I'm like, oh, boo. But this was not to take away from a very cool part of the movie. Meryl Streep is there, and she's singing. They start singing the song "My Love, My Life," and it's very much in the context of a mother and daughter relationship, and knowing that no matter how far away you are from somebody, you are still, that is your love, that is your life. And it was a really powerful moment. We leave it with a lot of questions though, because as Meryl's backing up, Donna's backing up out of the church, and she closes the doors, and that's it. Mm-hmm. We still don't know how she died.
Yep.
We still don't really have a whole lot of answers with that. But it's kind of like a guardian angel leaving, or the ghost of somebody who has finally done everything they need to, so now they can live or rest in peace.
Right.
Kind of a weird ending, but
I wasn't all about that. I mean, everything else got tied up except for that line with Donna. It's just how did that's the main thing. How did she die?
Yeah.
What happened? I mean, if you're gonna write somebody out of the movie,
they mentioned it so many damn times. They talk about her dying. It's only been a year, or it's been over a year, depending on who's talking about it. She's passed away and they want her there, but they never talk about how. There's not even a slight hint of maybe she died of cancer, or there was an accident, or there's nothing. And I know it's not important, but if you have somebody as important as a title character essentially, the mother, and you don't have a reason why she's not there, but yet she's talked about consistently and she does show up.
Right. It's there has to be something. I agree with you. It's just okay. We're stretching this.
And that essentially is the end of the movie. We do get a pre-credits song, which is kind of a cool way of closing it like they did in the first movie with, what was it that they closed it with?
Did they close with Dancing Queen?
It was...
No, it was Waterloo.
Waterloo, yeah. So they ended the first movie with Waterloo. This one they end with...
Super Trooper.
A Super Trooper, which was cool because you have every character shows up in their... Well, Cher starts it, and Cher's hair is very frizzed out.
Very big.
Oh, very large.
That's very drag. Very drag.
And she comes up and she starts singing Super Trooper, and then points it off to... who's the other? Is it the second person? Oh, I'm trying to remember who the second one is that she points to. Because it's not Seyfried.
No, because she came later.
She was the third one.
Was it the young? It wasn't the young girls.
It was young Donna.
Was it just
she
her?
pointed off to young Donna.
She was in a different outfit. When she came out with the Dynamo, she was in a different outfit.
So she points at young Donna, who's singing, and then she points off to Sophie and Sky, and this is where you start to see Sky's wearing his stuff and everything. Everybody's got the Dynamo's outfit, the very stereotypical. And then they point off, and this is where I thought it was pretty funny. They point off to the three younger guys, who then they point off to,
the younger girls come in.
The younger girls come in, and it's the order doesn't matter at all. But my favorite part is where you start seeing the younger characters interacting with their older counterparts. That was really fun.
That's what I was waiting for. I wanted that moment, and I'm glad that we got it, because it's just the back, just kept passing it on. Because then I think from that point they pointed all off to Meryl Streep, who had a moment. Then pointed off to all the older guys, which was really funny with their beer and the leg cross.
They were standing behind the bar, and then they come out and they sit at the bar drinking their beers. And I lean over, I'm like, yeah, that'd be me in this movie.
Yep.
Got my beer and just doing the little bass and line, backup singing behind it.
Yep, and then everybody comes together and has this big moment of singing the song together.
Well, and I loved, so then you see everybody has these interactions, and you had the older and younger guys, and the first two are really getting into it. Then you had the younger Harry with Colin,
That was hilarious.
And he's just sitting there. He's like, because he's such a straight face, like no nonsense type of character. And you have the younger one who's very
very energetic.
Naive and energetic, and he's singing the Super Trooper background, and older Colin Firth is just, he's not having it. But that's it. They have everybody kind of like collectively gather, and then they go to an ending. We did stick around for the post credits because I looked online, found there was some, and yet again we have our Grecian customs officer.
Loved him.
Who is it's not really another scene. It's almost like it was it
was a deleted scene. It was an outtake.
Like an outtake. And you have young Harry who's saying if he's got to go get the girl. And he's like, yeah, if it doesn't work out, you know where to find me. And he starts singing "Take a Chance on Me," which I thought's hilarious. But he starts singing it. He's looking directly into the camera.
I was like, oh, they wrote this in there just to be... And then he's like, y'all can cut whatever you want.
So he breaks character, and he's like... I thought that was great. Never see... In a movie like this, you never see outtakes.
No.
You see them in a movie like a slapstick adult comedy kind of a thing, because those are funny. But I thought it was cool. It was a nice, neat little way of finishing off the movie. But that's it. So that kind of wraps up the plot. I only had a couple unanswered questions. We talked about how did Donna die, and then I still don't. I mean, of course, it's not really that important, but I still don't really know how Fernando ended up in Greece, because they met in Mexico. Right. They talk about that, and so but he ends up there. It's just a major coincidence that doesn't really matter, but I was like, that was kind of interesting. But so yeah, let's. What should our ranking scale today be?
I don't know.
We got so many options. We could go with unplanned pregnancies, which seems a little...
That's pushing it a little bit.
A little rough. I mean, we're an edgy show, but I don't know if I want to go that route.
Botox injections.
We could do Botox. There's a lot. We talked about this before we started recording. There's a lot of Botox in this movie.
How about dynamos?
Let's do dynamos. That sounds good. So your final thoughts on the movie and your scale of 1 to 5 dynamos.
So I enjoyed the movie. This is definitely something that if you're a musical person and you enjoy, go see it. Especially if you enjoyed the first one. You have to have seen the first movie to really understand what's going on. A lot of the story points. So it's on Netflix right now. Go watch it if you want to go see this movie. But I thought it was good. It's not going to win any Oscars. I mean, it's no Spice World, but I mean, come on. What else could be like Spice World? It does have Cher in it. So good movie. Very entertaining just to go listen to some fun music and a couple laughs. So I give it a 3 out of 5 dynamos.
Okay. So 3 out of 5 there from Nick. I agree with a lot of what he said. As far as plot, it's not as strong as the original musical. There were some elements that I enjoyed finding out. There were some aspects that I liked. I think as far as the plot goes, I didn't like the movie. As far as some of the songs, being a musical theater, fan. Yeah, I enjoy musicals. I do like jukebox musicals, and just anytime you can incorporate music into a movie like this. So I liked it as far as that goes. The plot was kind of unnecessary. Do we really need to know the storyline? We got a lot of that in the first movie, so it was kind of just... It's one of those times where you see Hollywood knows that it can make a few more bucks on it. Right now, they're going to make their money back. It was $75 million budget, and they've made 35 right now. So they're
the first weekend. They're going to make their money back.
It's the first weekend. It's the day after it released. They're not going to lose any money on this, but it just was one of those things where I was like, even when we first saw the trailer, we're like, we didn't need another Mamma Mia. No one was begging for it, but you're like, we'll go see it. So yeah, I enjoyed some of the songs. I actually think most of the songs that I enjoyed were the ones that they did in the first movie, just because it was better the way that they had portrayed them this time. If you have seen the first one, you liked the first one, go check it out. It's not going to be a waste of your time. Don't go in there expecting a foolproof plot or anything like that. It's a fun movie. It knows what it is. But for the sake of actually like good film, I'm going to give it a 1.5 dynamos. As far as a musical, I'll give it a 2.5 to 3. 2.75 because I'm not really, I can't give it that 3. I just can't, but it was fun. So yeah. I enjoyed it. It was good talk. This was a nice little fun episode.
Yeah, it was nice.
Nick, enjoy your time in Chicago. We can definitely have you on again now that we can do remote recording.
Yes,
so this is not your final episode. It's just your final episode as a resident of the Dayton, Cincinnati area. So yeah, next week, I did say that we were going to have a little announcement regarding the Mission Impossible Fallout. No, I am not going to see Mission Impossible Fallout next week. We were actually going to have a Drunk Drive-In Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. It is going to be in protest of the Mission Impossible Fallout movie, and I'm not quite sure what it is. I've been talking to a lot of people about what this next episode of Drunk Drive-In should include, and we got lots of ideas, but that will be something that you'll have to wait until next Thursday to find out. So until then, Nick, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
You guys drive home safe, and we'll see you next time.